Hello and welcome to Nithrania YouTube channel. You're watching another episode of the Game in a Nutshell series designed for explaining the board game rules. My name is Branislav Berec, and in this video we're going to learn how to play Crossing Oceans from PD Verlag, who were kind enough to give us this review copy. To set the game up, first choose which side of the game board you want to use. Both sides are functionally the same. Then separate all these ship tiles and the headquarter tiles by the number on their back, then shuffle each stack separately. Leave the stack with the number 0 and these starting tiles aside for the moment, and stack the tiles with number 1 to 9 in such a way that the stack of number 1 is on the top and stack with the number 9 is at the bottom. If it's more convenient, you can split the large stack into two smaller stacks and then start drawing the tiles from the stack with the tiles with number 1 and fill in all these 6 spaces on the market. Then place these starting ships on the game board. Each of these starting ships has the name of the corresponding city printed in the bottom left corner. So here we have Buenos Aires, which means the ship should be placed on this space. Now this is the setup for a 4-player game. In a 3-player game, take this Ariel ship, flip it to its back, and that closes this South Atlantic region for the duration of the game. In a 2-player game, also close the Pacific Ocean region, which means in a 2-player game only these 3 regions will be open in the game. I'm going to set up a 3-player game, so I need to flip this ship back to its active side. Then take this red lantern token and place it on each ship that remained face up on the game board. These red lantern tokens indicate which ship in each region is the oldest ship. Then each player chooses a color and takes all 10 captains and 7 trade houses of that color, 1 player board, 1 contract token and 150 pounds. Now take these steam ships with number 0 on their back and randomly deal 1 to each player. Place that ship in your personal supply somewhere next to your player board and take 1 flag token of the matching type and place it on your player board. And the remaining ships are placed in this area of the market on the spaces with the matching flags. In a 3-player game, there are 2 remaining ships. Then distribute the matching flags to all ships in the market as well, so each ship should have 1 flag of the matching type. Then look at the manufacturing year of your own ship, and the player who drew the oldest ship will take the ownership of this clipper. It is also indicated by this small number 1 on the ship, and you take the ownership by placing the captain of your color on that ship. As this icon indicates, with the ownership of that ship you also take 1 multicolored flag. Then the player with the second oldest ship will get the ownership of this one, and the player with the third oldest ship will get the ownership of the ship in Yokohama, and potentially the 4th player would get the ownership of Oriel here. This Scotia is a neutral ship and it will never be owned by any player. So each player should now have 1 colored flag and 1 multicolor flag. Finally, each player places 1 of their captains on this center space of this rondel. Then the player who owns this cutie sark becomes the first player of the game, and we're ready to start. In Crossing Oceans, each player represents a skilled shipping agent, building up a large merchant fleet of steamships. The game starts with the owner of this cutie sark, and players take turns starting with this first player and continuing in a clockwise direction. On your turn, you will perform these 3 steps in this order. First, you will either place a ship on the game board or take 1 contract. In the second step, which is optional, you may use those contracts. And then in the third step, you will choose 1 of these actions and perform that action. I will describe all those actions in more detail in just a minute, but in a nutshell, with ships you buy more ships. With region, fleet and cargo, you will generate income from those ships. With coal, you will place coal on the ships so that you can generate that income. With the house action, you will build trade houses on the game board on these spaces, which will increase your income as well. And finally, with this blue ribbon action, you will also get increased income if you have the fastest ship in the North Atlantic Ocean. If the stack of these tiles is empty, the endgame has been triggered. Players don't score any victory points over the course of the game, but at the end of the game you will score 3 victory points for each captain and each trade house that you would have on the game board. But the main source of victory points is your player board and these flags. You gain these flags when you buy ships, and from each column you gain as many victory points as indicated by the number of tokens you gain. So in this case it would be 9 victory points for blue ribbons, and you would get these 9 victory points for each flag from this column. So if you would have 3 flags here, you would score 3 times 9, 27 victory points. You would score each column like this. Then this multicolor token will score as many victory points as the number of different flags you would have. So here it would be 3 victory points for each multicolored flag. And then when you tally up all your victory points, the player with the most points is the winner. Now I'm going to describe all these 3 steps in more detail, and we will start with the first one: either place the ship or take the contract. Each region contains 2 to 4 ports, and these ports are linked with this line to a ship space. That ship space with the ship represents the regular line between this port and a port in Europe. Each port may only be served by 1 ship. If you have any ship in your personal supply and you decide to place that ship on the game board, take that ship, choose a region, and if that region has any empty spaces, you must place your ship in one of these empty spaces. Then place one of your captains on that ship together with 1 coal. That coal comes from the common supply. If you choose a region and there is no empty space in that region, you have to replace the oldest ship, which is marked with this red lantern. However, you can only do that if your ship is younger than the ship you are trying to replace. If you replace this Scotia ship, which is a neutral ship, return that ship back to the general supply, or basically remove that ship from the game. And if you replace a ship which belongs to another player, first, if there's any coal on that ship, return the coal to the common supply, then return the replaced ship back to its owner together with the captain, and the ship can be potentially used again if it can be legally placed. Then mark your ship with your captain, gain a coal from the common supply, and then place the red lantern on the oldest ship in the region. It can easily happen that it's actually your ship that you have just placed in the region. If you don't have any ships in your personal supply, or even if you do but you don't want to place them, instead of placing a ship on the game board, you may simply take 1 contract token. There is no limit to the number of these contract tokens you can have in your supply. Then in the second step, optionally, you may use these contracts. You may spend any number of contracts from your personal supply, and you may either exchange 1 contract for £20 or 1 contract for 1 coal. You take the coal from the common supply and you place it on one of your ships, one of your steam ships. You may never place a coal on ships like this, on these clippers. They even have this symbol which indicates that no coal can be placed on these ships. Then with this third option, if you spend 1 contract, you may move your captain on this rondel more than 3 spaces, which doesn't make any sense in the first round of the game, but in all subsequent rounds, if you want to move your captain, you can only move it from 1 to 3 spaces. If you want to move it any further, you have to spend 1 contract. More on that when we get to the third step of your turn. Then, with this action, you may spend 2 contract tokens and build a trade house. You may only build a trade house in a port where you have your ship and where you don't have any trade house yet. So after spending those 2 contracts, you may take the trade house from your personal supply, place it in the port where your ship is currently located, and as these icons indicate, you may take 1 of these trade tokens. Place that trade token on your player board in the first empty space of the corresponding column. If you would place the trade token later in the game in one of these spaces, you have to pay the indicated fee from your supply back to the general supply. If you build a trade house in a port which contains trade houses of other players, you have to pay £30 to each player who already has a trade house there. So in this example, the green player would have to pay £30 to red player and £30 to yellow player as well. So in the third step of your turn, you have to choose and carry out one action from this rondo. In the first round of the game, you may take your captain and place it on any action space on this rondo, and you may even place it on the spaces with other captains. In all your subsequent turns, you must move your captain 1, 2 or 3 spaces and carry out the chosen action. If you want to move the captain additional spaces from 4 to 7 spaces, you have to pay 1 contract. To clarify, with that 1 contract, you may move from 4 to 7 spaces. It's not 1 contract for each additional space. You may never stay on the space where you are, and you may never move around the rondel back to the same space. Again, you may move your captain to the space occupied by other captains. In this section of the video, I'm going to explain all these actions in the game, and we will start with this ships action. Note that both of these spaces contain the same ships action. With the ships action, you can buy the ships from the market. You can buy 1, 2 or 3 ships. The cost of the ship is indicated in this bottom left hand corner of the tile. In addition, you have to pay the fee if the ships are located in this first, second, third position of the market. If you buy the ships from this area, there is no additional fee, you only pay the base cost of the ship. To pay for the ships, you need to use the money from your personal reserve, and after you pay for the ship or ships, take the tiles, place those ships into your personal supply, and place the tokens on the dedicated space on your player board. After you buy a ship or ships, you have to add 3 new ships or headquarter tiles to the market. You always add 3 ships, 3 tiles, regardless whether you bought 1, 2 or 3 ships. To make the room for the new ships, you have to shift existing ones to the left. If you move the ship beyond this first position, move it to this area on the space with the matching flag. And then, once there are 3 spaces available, move the remaining tiles to the left and draw 3 new tiles from the deck. Add the corresponding flag tokens on the newly added ships. This area of the market can only contain 1 ship of each color, so if you move another ship of the same flag of the same type to this area, first remove the first ship from play, which means you remove that ship from the game and replace it with the ship coming from the market. This may happen more than once during one ship action. When you buy the headquarters, which is this type of tile, don't forget to take the multicolored flag, and in addition to the flag, you also take the token, which is indicated in the bottom right hand corner of the tile, and place it on your game board without paying the cost shown on that game board. If that column would be already full and you would have to gain another token, you can take a token of the column where you have the fewest tokens, again without paying the cost. One last note, when this stack of tiles runs out, so there are no more ships and headquarters, when any player buys a ship or a headquarter, since there are no additional tiles here, you don't move these ships to this area of the market, you simply slide the tiles to the left. When you take this fleet action, you take the income from all your ships in all regions. Income is this green number in the top right hand corner of the ship, and you may only generate that income if you spent 1 coal from that ship. The coal is returned back to the common supply. So in this example, if this ship doesn't have any coal, you would not generate this £40 income. You take that income into your personal reserve. Don't forget that these clippers don't need to consume the coal, so in this example you would generate this £20 income. With this region action, you also generate income, but only from one region, and on top of that, all ships in that region generate income. Again, you must consume one coal in order to generate that income, so in this case this yellow player wouldn't get this £30. And as a bonus for the player who triggered this action, if that player has any trade houses in that region, that player would get £30 for each trade house in the region. So in this example, the green player would generate 40 plus 30, that is 70, plus 30, that's 100 and 130 pounds. The red player would also have to spend a coal and generate £60 income. However, the red player wouldn't gain any bonuses from the trade houses. Then the next action which generates income is this cargo action. You can only take this action if you have any ship with this tonnage indication. If you do, again, you have to spend one coal and then you get £10 for each 1,000 tons. To make it easier, simply reduce 2 zeros from the number and that's the income you get. In this case it would be £60. Then the next action I'm going to talk about is this blue riband action. This blue riband action can only be taken by the fastest ship in this North Atlantic region because it was always awarded to the fastest ship between Europe and America. The speed of the ship in knots is indicated by this number, and as you can see, not all the ships have that number. And if you do have the fastest ship in this North Atlantic region, again you have to spend one coal and then you get double the income of that ship. That's the reward for being the fastest ship between Europe and America. If there's at least one other ship with the same fastest speed, you can still take the blue riband action, but it will cost you 2 coals. Then, in addition to the double income from this blue riband action, you also gain this blue ribbon token, which you place on your player board. Then the next action I'm going to talk about is this coal action. As the first step, you don't have to, but you may buy one of these coal tokens and pay the price indicated on your player board. And then take as many pieces of coal as there are coal icons on your player board. In this example, it is 4 coals. Now you have to distribute these coals evenly on your ships. To evenly distribute the coal among your ships means that, for example, this one already has 1 coal, these 2 ships don't have a coal yet, so both of them have to get 1 coal. Don't forget that this one is a clipper and doesn't require any coal. Now, since all these ships already have 1 coal and there are 2 coals remaining, you may distribute these 2 pieces anywhere you want, but you are not allowed to take 2 coals and place them all on one ship so that one ship has 3 coals and other ships only have 1 coal. That's not legal. Even distribution means that you try to distribute it as evenly as possible. In addition, no ship can have more than 3 coals, so if you have more than 3, all the access would be lost. Obviously, that would only be possible if all other ships would have 3 coals. And finally, the last action that I'm going to talk about is this house action. With this action, you may build a trade house in a port where your ship is currently located and where you don't have the trade house yet. So it's basically the same procedure as exchanging these 2 contracts for the new trade house. However, with one exception, when you do it as part of this house action, if the ship linked to that port has any coal, you may spend that coal and generate the income, in this case £50. And that's the difference between contracts and the house action. When you do these contracts, you don't generate income. And then you continue with placing the trade house and taking the tokens. So you place a trade house in the port. If there are trade houses of any other players, you pay each other player £30. And then you take one of those trade tokens, which you place on your player board, and you have to pay the cost if it's indicated on that spot. if any player takes the ship's action. And at the end of this action, after you add additional 3 tiles to the game board, the stack of these tiles is empty, the endgame has been triggered. Finish the current round, and then, starting with the first player, all players have 3 final rounds. You may use the coal tokens as the counter of all the remaining rounds. When you finish the last round of the game, so that all players have the same number of turns in the game is over and proceed to final scoring. The final scoring is shown here in this area of the game board. First, each player receives £20 for each remaining contract and coal on their ships. So here, for example, the green player would receive 20, 40, 60 pounds, plus additional 20 and 40 pounds for the remaining contracts. And then take all your remaining money, and for each 100 pounds you score 1 victory point. Then for each captain and the trade house on the game board you score 3 victory points. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times 3, 24 victory points for the green player. And then calculate the victory points from your player board and the number of flags you have acquired. In each column, the lowest token determines the number of victory points you score for each flag in that column. So here we have 7 victory points for each blue token, 7 victory points for each black flag, 10 victory points for green, and so on. Note that these initial tokens count as well, so if this white token wouldn't be here, this flag would be worth 3 victory points. Obviously, if you don't have any flags for the corresponding column, you don't score any victory points. This pre-printed flag doesn't count. Then each multicolored flag is worth as many victory points as you have different types of flags. In this example, it would be 4 points, so for 2 multicolored flags, this player would score 8 victory points. Then sum up all your victory points, and whoever has the most points is the winner. So that's how you play Crossing Oceans. If you have any questions or comments, please put them into the comment sections below. I'll do my best to answer as many as I can. If you like the series, please subscribe. You can support the channel on the Patreon page. You can click the thank you button under the video. You've been watching Game in a Nutshell. My name is Branislav Berec and hope to see you next time. I would like to thank everyone who has ever supported the channel, and especially the current supporters listed on this page. If you too would like to support the channel in creation of videos like this and other video tutorials and other content on this channel, please visit the patreon.com/Nithrania.